The time-lapse tells the story. From the day before the Iran war to several days in, a global energy supply choked off. Where 20% of the world's oil once flowed, hundreds of oil tankers now idle. How disruptive is this to have this superhighway essentially closed?
It's massively disruptive across all manner of regions and all manner of commodities as well.
180 ships are sitting still in the water, not moving, just waiting. That's what's happening right now at Fujairah Port, and it's because of one narrow strip of water that controls a fifth of the world's oil, the Strait of Hormuz. You've probably heard the name a lot lately.
Strait of Hormuz.
President Trump asked the chairman of the Joint Chiefs why they can't just immediately reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
It's one of the many countries hoping the U.S. can reopen the nearby Strait of Hormuz.
It sits between Iran and Oman, and at its narrowest point, it's only 21 miles wide. But the actual lanes where ships travel? Just 2 miles wide in each direction. 2 miles. And through those 2 miles, about 20 million barrels of oil move every single day. That's oil from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, and the UAE, all of it squeezing through this one tiny gap to reach the rest of the world. And right now, that gap is essentially closed.
It's considered a major oil choke point, and while some Asian nations are most reliant on it, the U.S. might be hit with a slow drip impact. Our Marcus Moore has this story.
Since the U.S. and Israel launched strikes on Iran in late February 2026, Iran has hit back hard. Traffic through the strait has dropped by more than 95%. Oil prices shot up from around $70 a barrel to nearly $120. The EU is paying an extra 13 billion euros on fuel imports. And 2,000 ships are stuck on either side of the waterway, going nowhere.
Shipping traffic through the waterway has been seriously impacted by the war. 20% of the world's oil passes through there. Iran has effectively closed it off. In a series of early morning social media posts, President Donald Trump urged his NATO allies into action, telling countries that didn't help the US-Israeli war on Iran to either buy American oil, we have plenty, or go to the Strait of Hormuz and just take it.
This isn't just a problem for governments and oil companies. When oil stops moving, everything gets more expensive. Food, transport, and goods on store shelves. It hits regular people fast. Now, here's what makes this situation really alarming. The world has known about this problem for decades. Engineers, strategists, and governments have studied it, worried about it, and run simulations about what happens if the strait closes. And they still don't have a complete answer. But there is one idea that keeps coming back no matter how many times people say it's impossible. A canal. A massive, $100 billion canal cut straight through the mountains of Oman that would let oil tankers bypass the strait entirely. Let's talk about why that idea exists, why it's so hard, and why the world still can't let go of it. The countries around the Persian Gulf have actually tried to build alternatives already. Saudi Arabia spent billions on the East-West Pipeline, a 1,200-kilometer pipe that moves oil across the entire country to the Red Sea. Right now, it's running at full capacity, pumping 7 million barrels a day. The UAE built its own pipeline from its oil fields straight to the port of Fujairah, which sits outside the strait. That one handles about 1.5 million barrels a day. Together, these pipelines can move around 9 million barrels per day. Sounds like a lot, but the strait normally handles 20 million. So, these pipelines cover less than half of what's needed. And there's another problem. These pipelines are on land. They can be hit by missiles and drones. In 2019, Houthi drones actually struck pumping stations on Saudi Arabia's East-West pipeline and forced a temporary shutdown, the very pipeline that was built to bypass the strait in the first place. So pipelines help, but they're not the answer. Which brings us back to the canal idea. Look at a map of Oman's Musandam Peninsula, the piece of land that sticks up into the Strait of Hormuz like a jagged mountain. In some places, the distance between the Persian Gulf on one side and the Gulf of Oman on the other is only about 32 kilometers, a thin wall of mountain. That's all that separates trapped oil tankers from the open ocean. So the idea is simple. Dig a canal through that wall. Ships sail in from the Persian Gulf, go through the canal, come out the other side, and they've completely avoided the strait. No Iran, no risk. No panic. On a flat map, it looks almost obvious. But the Musandam Peninsula is not flat. It's part of the Hajar Mountains, one of the most rugged, rocky landscapes in the entire Middle East. Some of those peaks rise more than 2,000 meters. The rock is ancient, hard limestone, and it's been there for millions of years. Building a canal here doesn't mean digging through sand. It means blasting through entire mountains. And the canal would have to be enormous. Modern oil tankers are about 400 meters long, longer than 4 football fields placed end to end. To fit 2 of them moving in opposite directions at the same time, the canal would need to be 300 meters wide and 25 meters deep. 3 lock systems would be needed to raise and lower ships over the mountain peak of 650 meters. The total amount of rock that would need to be removed is 400 million cubic meters. That's 40 times more than the entire Panama Canal excavation. Before a single blast, workers would need to carve 180 kilometers of access road out of vertical cliff faces, literally blasting ledges into the sides of mountains wide enough for trucks. All equipment would have to arrive by sea and be lifted ashore by crane. There's no power grid, so workers would have to build a power station first. There's no fresh water for 200 kilometers, so a desalination plant would have to be built before anything else. And inside the mountain itself are a lot of surprises. Drill 40 meters down, and you might find a cave the size of a cathedral. There's a freshwater lens hidden inside the mountain. Hit it wrong during construction, and the canal floods before it's even finished. The blast plan alone runs 4,000 pages, with 40,000 individual detonations planned over 2 years before the first charge is placed. The estimated cost? Somewhere between $100 and $200 billion. Some analysts who've actually read the geological surveys say $100 billion is optimistic. It would likely take 30 years to build. The Panama Canal expansion, for comparison, cost around $5 billion. But here's the part that makes serious engineers and strategists genuinely uncomfortable. Even if you built it, every kilometer, every lock, every tunnel, you still might not have solved the problem. Dr. Karen Young, a senior energy security scholar at Columbia University, studied these kinds of proposals and put it plainly. A canal is a solution to a geopolitical problem dressed up as an engineering project, and those are not the same thing. Because the Musandam Peninsula belongs to Oman. And Oman has no official plan to build a canal. Oman has carefully stayed neutral in a region full of dangerous rivalries, and its plans for that area focus on tourism and port development, not blasting a shipping lane through its mountains. Beyond that, Iran, the very country whose actions created the need for this canal, would have every reason to block it, sabotage it, or threaten it. A working canal would take away one of Iran's most powerful tools. The threat of closing the strait is what gives Iran so much leverage. Remove that leverage and Iran loses something it will not give up easily. And even if the canal somehow got built, it becomes a new choke point. One grounded tanker blocks it completely. One targeted missile strike shuts it down for months. An earthquake in the seismically active Hajar Mountains could damage it for years. The world would simply be trading one bottleneck for another at a cost of $100 billion in 3 decades of construction. So where does that leave us? The world is in the middle of a real crisis right now. 3 possible paths are being discussed by analysts and governments. The first, Gulf countries try to reopen the strait by force, without the U.S. The problem is they don't have the military capability to do it safely, and any attack could push Iran to strike oil infrastructure across the entire Gulf.
Returning from an unannounced visit to U.S. troops serving in the Middle East, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called on other countries to do more to keep the Strait of Hormuz open.
President Trump's been willing to do the heavy lifting on behalf of the free world to address this threat of Iran. It's not just our problem set.
0-0-17. The second, a full U.S.-led military operation with Gulf states providing support. This carries serious risks of escalation, especially with Israel pushing against any negotiated deal with Iran. The third, and most likely, Iran keeps the strait partially closed and uses it as a bargaining chip, slowly letting certain countries through while negotiating with the U.S. behind the scenes. On March 26, Iran already allowed ships from China, Russia, India, Iraq, and Pakistan to pass through. That's not a coincidence, it's a message. Full reopening will come with a price. Meanwhile, a second threat is building. The Houthis in Yemen, backed by Iran, are reportedly being asked to restart attacks on ships in the Red Sea, which would block the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the other major choke point that Saudi Arabia's pipeline oil must pass through to reach Asia. If both close at the same time, the impact on global supply chains would be severe. The Musandam Canal, for all its enormous challenges, keeps coming back as an idea because it represents something real, the world's desire to stop being held hostage by a 2-1-mile stretch of water. But right now, no government has signed a contract, no consortium has committed the money. No engineering firm has a confirmed route. The canal exists in the space between what the world needs and what the world is actually willing to build. What are your thoughts on this proposed $100 billion plan to bypass the Strait of Hormuz? Tell us in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this.